Hello and welcome to the channel again. This is Sam, trying to spin to win on Swift. Well, the Queen stage is upon us, so let's go on a celebration of pain on the Royal Pump Room course.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
This is going to be one tough stage, as it should be, being the Queen stage of the tour. I just hope my legs cooperate today. They felt really good yesterday. Surely they'll be cooperating today again.
You serious?
That guy again, man, he is so annoying, don't you think? Anyway, time for a quick look at the GC standings in the CRP category after 7 stages. Well, it turns out I am now a first page rider. Just down in 25th place out of 86 riders that have completed all 7 stages so far. So I'm still fighting hard to stay in the top half, and I certainly can't take that for granted yet. As for the top 10, no major changes here. Elena is still top of the pile, and we still have 3 ladies in the top 10. And I've also found a new tactic in my FRR races. That is, I just sit on Mr. Horning's wheel, as we seem to end up in the same races, and he will get me to the finish in double time. Super strong rider. Okay, let's have a quick look at today's course, the Royal Pump Room. I've said it already, but I think it warrants mentioning again. This will be real tough.
I mean real super tough.
We covered this course in detail in yesterday's vlog, so just some highlights here today. The one constant of this course, where we will do 2 full laps with over 55 kilometers of riding and almost 1,000 meters of climbing, is that it's never flat. Either you're working hard going up one of the numerous small climbs, or you're trying to recover for the next one. There is no middle ground really on this parkour. I expect a very attritional race where the front group will be slowly whittled down to a smaller number, and I just hope I can hang on as long as possible. While the 2 KOMs will be hard, there are a few other climbs that I think will be equally hard, so we just have to bring out the VO2 max today and hope it will be enough to survive. But on the positive side, one thing this course isn't is boring, and I'm actually looking forward to it. As for wheel choice, I will be on the disc wheels today, but the NV 7.8s or the die-cut 62s are also good options for sure. Okay, let's see how we get on today. I know it's going to be real tough, but hey, let's go for a gentle spin in the Yorkshire countryside, shall we? I wish I could show you a lot of footage from this race, as it's constantly up and down. But this video would be way too long, so I have to be a bit selective here. Not too much happened at the start, and we are now approaching the first sprint segment of the day. My tactics today were the same as any FRR race: stay with the front as long as you can. And I was a bit nervous about today's stage, if I'm honest, as it's really easy to quickly drop off the front here on these many climbs. I thought the first KOM and the pot bank climb later in the lap would be the key selection points, but there are a number of other climbs as well. I'm in a pretty good position at the start of the sprint, and at first it didn't seem too bad, but then I remembered that when we turn the corner, we have an uphill finish. So I have to put in a small dig here to make sure I don't drop too far back. I always thought the group would come together after this sprint anyway, but you never know, so you have to be alert here. A skip forward to the first KOM of the day, the Yorkshire KOM. The pace had been decent on the various hills up until this point, but not crazy, and I was able to rest a lot on the descents. The benefits of being a slightly heavier rider and using disc wheels, I suppose. We had dropped a couple of riders already, but most of the start pen was still here. But I knew that would likely change on this climb, especially if people decided to go all out here. You can see I'm at the back of the group here going into the climb, but then I pushed a little bit to use that speed as much as possible, and then we're out of the saddle climbing away. The first steep section started off pretty hot at 6 or 7 watts per kilo, but as we get closer to the flatter section in the middle of the climb, the pace drops somewhat closer to 5 watts per kilo. But the damage has already been done as the peloton is really stretched out at this point. I'm in a good position though, and I feel comfortable now that I will make this selection. The second steep section is tough. I always find this one drags on a bit, and I'm still pushing over 5 watts per kilo here, but I am staying towards the front. So far so good. But this was, as expected, a key selection point in the race, as a good 10 to 12 riders or so were dropped here. Another skip forward, and we are now approaching the pot bank climb. The second KOM of the day, the Yorkshire come reverse, wasn't that bad. At least I didn't think so. But another 5 or so riders were dropped here, but more on some of those guys in a second though. Going into this climb, I knew this would likely be the hardest part of the course. If I survive this one, I will likely stay with the front at least until the Yorkshire come again on the second lap, and even if I'm dropped there, I can hopefully minimize any time losses. So this is an important part of the race. Again, I start to climb at the back and gather some speed before we hit the really steep section at the start of this climb. We all push hard here. I saw a lot of red numbers, and I was doing 6 or 7 watts per kilo for a good while here. The pace does drop a little, but we're still pushing hard, and I'm still pretty well positioned here. As we get towards the top of the climb, it flattens out slightly, and I'm careful only to do enough to stay towards the front, and I try to save as much energy as I can here. We get to the top, and to my surprise, nobody, at best I can tell, had been dropped. We pushed pretty hard here, so that shows we had some really strong riders here in the front group. Another quick skip forward here. I was busy reading the comments in the chat here, as there was a lot of talk about what Domestiques or DOMs should and shouldn't do in a race. More on that in a second. But then I noticed my heart rate monitor turned off. Annoying, as I often look at my heart rate to see what my effort level is. No clue what was wrong, perhaps the battery just ran out. But back to the issue of DOMs. So as I mentioned earlier, a few riders were dropped a bit earlier. And looking back at the footage, I can see that they're around 20 seconds behind for quite some time. And they seem to have a DOM working really hard to bring them back to the front group. In the end, they do catch on, but without him, I think it's highly unlikely they would have bridged the 20+ second gap to a group that was going at a decent clip. Later in the race, the DOM helps his riders again a few times as they seem to get dropped on the climbs and then get back on with the help of the DOM. I know there were some annoyed people on both sides during the race, but personally I wasn't too bothered. But I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on this. Please do let me know in the comments below. We are now approaching the Yorkshire come again. The pace had been steady, but not crazy at the start of the second lap, and I was unsure whether people would really push super hard here or save their legs somewhat for the later climbs. As we start to climb, I can tell the pace is less than the first time around, which I was really happy about. I still felt reasonably strong at this point, but there's no need to waste bullets if you don't have to. We probably averaged 4 to 5 watts per kilo this time up the climb, and I didn't have any issues staying towards the front, and I don't think anybody else was dropped here either, as best I can tell. We are now approaching the pot bank climb for the second time. Front group still together at this point, and I had been able to rest quite a bit, so I was preparing myself for a big push here. If you have really good legs, this is probably a good time to use them to get away, so I wanted to make sure I stayed towards the front here, if at all possible, in case there were any breakaway attempts. The start of the climb was pretty spicy again, with some high watts, but I kept plugging on, and then I see a couple of riders are drifting a few seconds ahead. I keep pushing, and all of a sudden I find myself in second place as I catch on to the wheel of Mr. Muertos. I can see the group is really strung out, and I'm toying with the idea of going long here. So I push a little bit on the front to keep the pace going, but then I decide to back off as it's just too far to go at this point. A few people were dropped here though, and the front group is now down to 13 people. a short hop forward, and we're now going up the last climb before the descent into the finish. I had rested a little bit at least since the pot bank climb, and at this point I was starting to prepare myself for a likely sprint finish. But then one of the riders, Santu, tells me to go long. He must have watched yesterday's vlog, as I was annoyed at myself for not giving it a go in that race. So I decide on the spot to have a go this time. As we hit the steeper parts of this little hill, I hit the power pretty hard and I go to the front. I keep pushing hard here as I was committed now and I wanted to see what would happen. I get to the top, pretty gassed out if I'm honest, and I only have a small gap, so I slow the effort for a little bit, but then I notice the rest are not really gaining all that much, apart from Mr. Muertos, who then pushes past me. I draft on his wheel for a little bit, but then I decide to go again, so I start sprinting to gather some speed as we're going downhill. I then rest for a bit on the downhill before I sprint again, rinse and repeat. And all of a sudden, I have a 5-second lead with only some 600 or 700 meters to go. I put in another dig, and when I get to the finishing straight, I know that I will take the win. I still keep pushing to the end though to make absolutely sure. And I roll over the line in first place. Yay for me. Now a quick look at the results. Well, let me say that again. Sam finished first. I can't remember when that last happened, so I am going to enjoy that for a long time. That is, all the way until tomorrow's individual time trial, where I know I will not be first. Far from it. But really happy with that race against some tough competition. Blaze finished in second place, and Mr. Day of the Dead, Fred Muertos, finished in third. And thanks again to Santu for prompting me to go long. I'm really happy I took his advice today. Alright, post-race thoughts. Queen stage, and a win. Never thought I'd say that. We'll take that all day long. Really happy with that race, and especially my finish. Felt pretty strong today. But the only fly in the ointment is my heart rate monitor. Must have stopped about halfway through the race or something, and I couldn't get it going again. But if anybody out there in the YouTube verse wants to see the full video of me cycling for an hour and a half to check that there's no fun and games going on, please let me know. Happy to provide. Apart from that, the race went pretty well. Wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. First lap was okay, and the second lap was pretty chill as well. Some interesting domestique action. I'm sure I'll cover that in the race recap. And then we get towards the end, and feel pretty good. We start going up the pot bank climb. Still feel pretty good. And one of the guys had a bit of a go there. I think it was Fred, Mr. Day of the Dead, Muertos. So I went after him, and I think we had a couple of seconds, and I was like, maybe I should go here. But it was a little bit too long, over 3 kilometers. So I thought perhaps the guys behind me are tired of chasing us down. I rest a bit on the downhill, and then we'll see. And then it was one of the guys in the chat said, go long. And I just had to give it a go, why not? And pushed pretty hard, got a bit of a gap. I kept going, and the gap extended to about 5 seconds. I got to the top of that little hill and I was cooked. And I was like, oh, that's over. But I saw it was really strung out behind me, and I still had 5 or 6 seconds. So I rested a couple seconds, and then because it's a downhill, I sprinted full gas to get the speed, and then you can just coast for a bit and then do the same again. And I did that, and I got to the bend in the corner before the final straight, and I still had 5 or 6 seconds, and I knew unless I got a flat, I was gonna win. So really happy with that race. And I didn't feel, apart from the very end, that tired. So hopefully I have a little bit left for the time trial tomorrow. But that's gonna be a really tough one. No idea how to pace that one. And as you know, I'm terrible at ITT pacing anyway. So we'll bank the win, move on, and try to have fun tomorrow, come what may. Hopefully, I'll see you then. Well, the Queen stage was indeed tough. So, tomorrow's time trial, which will probably take about an hour, should just be like a walk in the park, right? Wrong. As FRR Race Control have saved a banger of an ITT for the last stage. This parkour will be, at least I think so, really hard to manage your effort on. And as such, I think it will be an interesting and fun stage. Or as fun as an ITT can get, that is. After a short descent at the start, we're going up the 23rd Street reverse KOM. It is just over 1 kilometer long at 3.5% gradient, but keep in mind that it gets steeper towards the end, so measure your effort here accordingly. Very soon after that nice warm-up, we hit the Libby Hill reverse KOM. This is short at just 700 meters, and the average gradient is only 3.6%. But don't let that fool you, as the start of this climb is extremely steep, hitting 22% gradient at one point. So make sure you carry good speed from the descent to help you get over this hump. Then you actually get a kilometer or so of relatively flat road before we go up the E Main Street climb. This is not an official climb, but at 1.35 kilometers with an average gradient of 3.5%, it is not to be sneezed at. I always find this one drags on longer than I think, so you've been warned. Once you reach the top, then you have another kilometer or so of flatter road before you start this evil little lap again. And wait for it, you still have to do it 2 more times. After that roller coaster of pain, we have a longer flattish section that also contain 2 of the 3 sprint segments on the course. These are both under 300 meters for you sprinters out there, so hopefully not too bad. We then start the final section of the course, which is essentially the reverse of the 3 laps you did earlier. First, we go up the Libby Hill Com, just over 600 meters at 6.4% gradient. Then soon thereafter, we go up this 23rd Street Com, which is very short at 260 meters, but also very steep at 9.3% average gradient. And FRR Race Control, in his infinite wisdom, also set this climb as the final sprint of the day.
He's evil!
We then face the Governor Street climb, which will feel, I'm sure, like you're going up Alpe de Swift at this point. Only 600 meters long, but at 5.8%, which then turns into a final uphill drag for the last 500 meters or so, before you're done for the day. So a real roller coaster of a stage, this one. As I mentioned, I think pacing will be really difficult here. You do want to push on the climbs, as you can save a lot of time there, but if you build up too much lactic in your legs too soon, well, it will be one long afternoon for you, that is for sure. I would think the stage will take just over an hour for the CRP GHT start pen, so pacing will be crucial, as always, during an ITT. As for wheel choice, another tricky one this. I think for lighter riders, disc wheels is the way to go. For somewhat heavier riders, like me, I still think disc is good, as hopefully you can carry a lot of speed from the descents into the start of the uphill sections. But I can also see people going for the 7.8s or the die-cut 62s. I'm likely going for disc wheels though. Stage 8, done. And we survived the Queen stage, somehow. And we only have one more stage to go now. So, let's put a smile on that pain face tomorrow. This is Sam, trying to spin to win on Swift, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good one. Bye-bye.